The bruise on Martha Coleman's cheek had faded to a sickly yellow-green, but the words her husband had spoken 3 nights ago still throbbed fresh as an open wound. She stood at the cracked mirror in their cabin outside Parowan, Utah, studying the face that Vernon had called too ugly to love, too plain to even look at without feeling disgust. Her fingers trembled as they traced the sharp angle of her jaw, the slight crook in her nose from when she had fallen from a horse at age 12. The freckles scattered across her pale skin like spilled paint. At 24 years old, Martha had spent the last 5 years married to a man who reminded her daily that he had settled, that no other man would have taken her, that she should be grateful he provided a roof over her worthless head. The September morning of 1873 broke cold and clear over the Utah Territory, the kind of day that made the red rock cliffs surrounding the valley glow like embers. Martha pulled on her worn calico dress, the fabric threadbare at the elbows, and began her morning routine. Vernon would be waking soon, expecting his breakfast, expecting her silence, expecting her to move through the cabin like a ghost who knew better than to speak unless spoken to. She had learned that lesson through split lips and bruised ribs, through nights spent sleeping on the hard floor because she had burned the bacon or folded his shirts incorrectly. The cabin was small, just 2 rooms on a patch of land Vernon had claimed would make them rich. But his grand plans of farming had withered like everything else in their marriage. He spent most of his time in Parowan saloons, gambling away what little money they had, coming home drunk and mean, his fists ready to teach her another lesson about her failings as a wife. Martha had stopped crying about it 2 years ago. Tears only made him angrier. She was carrying a bucket of water from the well when she heard the horses. 3 riders approached from the east, moving at an easy pace along the dusty trail that passed near their property. Martha set the bucket down, shielding her eyes against the sun. Strangers were common enough on this route, cowboys driving cattle north or south, prospectors heading to the silver mines, families seeking new land. But something made her pause, made her heart beat just a fraction faster. The lead rider sat tall in his saddle, his hat pulled low against the morning glare. Even from a distance, there was something commanding about the way he carried himself, confident but not arrogant, alert but not tense. As they drew closer, Martha could see he was younger than she had first thought, perhaps 27 or 28, with dark hair that curled slightly beneath his hat brim, and a strong jaw shadowed with several days of stubble. The riders stopped at the property line, and the lead man touched his hat brim in greeting. "Morning, madam. We are looking for the Sanderson Ranch. Fellow in town said it was along this route." Martha found her voice, though it came out quieter than she intended. "You passed it about 2 miles back. There is a sign, but it fell over in the last windstorm. You will see a large cottonwood tree with a split trunk. The ranch road is just beyond that." The cowboy's eyes lingered on her face, and Martha instinctively turned her head, trying to hide the fading bruise. But his expression did not change to disgust or pity. Instead, he smiled, a warm, genuine expression that reached his eyes and made something long dormant stir in Martha's chest. "Much obliged, madam. Name is Ryder Kincaid. These are my brothers, Samuel and Thomas. We are hiring on at Sanderson's for the cattle drive." He paused, and his voice softened. "Are you all right out here alone? We could not help but notice your husband is not around." "He is sleeping," Martha said quickly, glancing back at the cabin. "And I am fine. Thank you for your concern." Ryder Kincaid's gaze moved from her face to the cabin and back again, and Martha saw something shift in his expression, a tightening around his eyes that suggested he understood more than she had said. But he simply nodded. "If you ever need anything, madam, We will be at Sanderson's for the next few weeks. It is not far if you need help." Before Martha could respond, Vernon's voice bellowed from inside the cabin. "Martha, where is my breakfast, you useless cow?" She flinched, the old familiar fear flooding through her veins. The three cowboys heard it too, and Samuel, a younger version of Ryder with the same dark hair and strong features, tensed in his saddle. But Ryder held up a hand, keeping his brother in check even as his jaw clenched. "We should go," Ryder said quietly, his eyes never leaving Martha's face. "But my offer stands. You need anything at all, you come find us." Martha nodded, not trusting her voice, and watched as the three riders turned their horses and headed back down the trail. She stood there longer than she should have, watching until they disappeared from view, her heart hammering against her ribs in a way that had nothing to do with fear and everything to do with the way Ryder Kincaid had looked at her. Not like she was ugly or worthless or invisible, but like she was a person who mattered. Vernon's shouting grew louder, and Martha hurried back inside, bracing herself for whatever the day would bring. The next week passed in its usual misery. Vernon's temper grew worse after he lost money in a card game, and Martha learned to move even more quietly, to anticipate his needs before he could voice them, to make herself as small and insignificant as possible. But at night, lying on her thin mattress in the corner of the main room, she found her thoughts drifting to the cowboy with the kind eyes, to the way he had spoken to her like she was worth something, to the warmth in his voice when he offered help. It was dangerous thinking, and Martha knew it. She was a married woman, bound by law and God to Vernon Coleman, no matter how cruel he was. Divorce was nearly impossible, especially for a woman with no money and no family. Her parents had died of fever when she was 18, and her younger sister had married a shopkeeper in Colorado, moving away 3 years ago. Martha had not seen her since. She was trapped, and she had accepted that truth long ago, but acceptance did not stop the dreams. On a Wednesday morning, Vernon announced he was riding into Parowan and would not be back until late. He needed a shirt mended and clean water for washing when he returned, and he expected the cabin to be spotless. Martha nodded obediently, keeping her eyes down as he saddled his horse and rode off. Only when he was well out of sight did she allow herself to breathe fully. The day stretched before her with rare freedom. She hung the washing on the line, scrubbed the wooden floor until her knuckles ached, and mended Vernon's shirt with tiny, careful stitches. By afternoon, the cabin sparkled as much as such a humble place could sparkle, and Martha realized she had a few hours of daylight left with nothing to do. The realization felt almost foreign. Time for herself was a luxury she rarely knew. She decided to walk to the creek that ran about a mile from the cabin, following it up into the foothills where wild berries grew in late summer. The bushes would be mostly bare now in September, but the walk itself would be worth it. Martha grabbed a basket and set out, her steps light for the first time in weeks. The creek ran cold and clear over smooth stones, its banks lined with willows that rustled in the breeze. Martha followed the water upstream, breathing in the clean air, letting the tension slowly ease from her shoulders. She had forgotten what it felt like to walk without fear, to exist in a moment without calculating every movement against Vernon's potential reaction. She was kneeling by a berry bush, plucking the last few withered fruits when she heard a horse approaching. Martha's heart lurched, her first thought that Vernon had returned early and found her gone. But when she turned, it was not her husband. Ryder Kincaid sat astride a buckskin gelding, and he raised his hand in greeting. "Afternoon, Mrs. Coleman. Did not mean to startle you." Martha stood quickly, brushing dirt from her skirt, her pulse racing for entirely different reasons now. "Mr. Kincaid, what are you doing out here?" He swung down from his saddle with easy grace. "Checking fence lines for Mr. Sanderson. His property extends up into these hills." He gestured toward the ridge above them. "What about you? Is it safe for you to be out here alone?" "My husband is in town," Martha said, then immediately wished she had not shared that information. It felt too intimate, too much like an invitation. But Ryder simply nodded and walked closer, his horse following behind him like a well-trained dog. Up close, Martha could see details she had missed during their first meeting. His eyes were hazel, green and gold and brown all mixed together, and they crinkled at the corners when he smiled. He had a small scar above his left eyebrow and another along his jaw. His hands, resting loosely at his sides, were work roughened and strong. "Finding anything good?" he asked, nodding toward her basket. "Not much. The season is mostly over. Still, it is a nice walk. Pretty country out here, even if it is harsh." They stood in awkward silence for a moment, and then Ryder said, "Mrs. Coleman, I hope you do not think me too forward, but I have been thinking about you since we met last week. Are you truly all right? Your husband, he seems like he has a hard temper." Martha's throat tightened. No one had asked her that question in years, not directly, not with genuine concern in their voice. The people in Parowan knew what Vernon was like. Some pitied her silently. Others thought she must deserve it somehow. But no one intervened, because a man's wife was his business, and the law gave him every right to discipline her as he saw fit. "I am managing," she said carefully. Ryder stepped closer, and Martha caught the scent of leather and sage and something uniquely him. "You should not have to just manage. A man who treats his wife like property, who hurts her, that is not managing. That is surviving." The tears came before Martha could stop them, hot and sudden, spilling down her cheeks as years of suppressed emotion broke through her carefully maintained walls. She turned away, mortified, trying to wipe her face with her sleeve, but Ryder moved around to face her, his expression gentle. "I am sorry," he said softly. "I did not mean to upset you." "You did not," Martha managed. "It is just that no one has said anything like that to me in so long, and I forgot what it felt like to have someone care. I do care." The words were simple, but the weight behind them made Martha's breath catch. "You deserve better than what he gives you. You deserve to be treated with kindness and respect. You do not even know me. I know enough." Ryder reached up slowly, giving Martha time to pull away, and gently brushed a tear from her cheek with his thumb. The touch was so tender, so different from every harsh grip and violent shove she had endured, that Martha felt something crack open inside her chest. "I know that you are stronger than you think, surviving what you have survived. I know that you have kind eyes and a gentle voice. And I know that any man who calls you ugly is a fool who does not deserve you." Martha stared at him, unable to speak, unable to process the way her heart was racing, the way her skin tingled where he had touched her. This was madness. She was married. This cowboy was a stranger, here for a few weeks at most before moving on to whatever job came next. Nothing could come of this conversation except more pain. But God help her, she did not want him to stop talking. "Mr. Kincaid, I appreciate your kindness, but I cannot hear these things. I am married, and whatever you think of my husband, I am bound to him." "Bound by law," Ryder said quietly. "Not by any kind of real love or respect. Martha, if I may call you that, you do not have to stay with him. There are ways out, places you could go. With what money, what skills? I have nowhere to go, no one to help me. And even if I did, Vernon would come after me. He would never let me leave. I am his wife, his property in the eyes of God and country." Ryder's jaw tightened, and Martha saw anger flash in his eyes, but it was not directed at her. "That is wrong. The law is wrong. You are not property. You are a person with your own thoughts and dreams and the right to live without fear. The world does not work that way for women like me. It should." He held her gaze, and Martha saw determination there, a fierce protective instinct that made her knees weak. "And maybe with the right help it could. For you specifically." Martha shook her head, even as part of her screamed to say yes, to take whatever lifeline this man was offering. "You will be gone in a few weeks. The cattle drive will end and you will move on to the next job, the next town. I will still be here, and if Vernon even suspected I had spoken to you like this, he would kill me. Then come with me when I leave." The words hung in the air between them, impossible and tempting and terrifying all at once. Martha's basket slipped from her fingers, berries scattering across the ground. "You cannot be serious." "I am completely serious." Ryder took both her hands in his, and the warmth of his touch made Martha want to weep. "I know this is sudden. I know we barely know each other. But I have not been able to stop thinking about you, and not just because I am worried for your safety. There is something about you, Martha Coleman, something that makes me want to know everything. What makes you smile, what you dream about, what your voice sounds like when you laugh. I want to hear your thoughts on everything from the weather to politics to what you like for breakfast. And I know that sounds like the ramblings of a fool, but I have never felt this way before, and I cannot just walk away and leave you in danger." Martha's head spun. This was not how life worked. Cowboys did not ride in and rescue women from bad marriages. Real life was not a dime novel romance. And yet here stood Ryder Kincaid, holding her hands like they were precious, looking at her like she was beautiful, offering her a way out of the hell she had been living. "I cannot," she whispered, but the words lacked conviction. "You can. I will help you. We will figure it out together." "You would be branded a criminal, stealing another man's wife. I do not give a damn what people call me as long as you are safe." Martha pulled her hands free, wrapping her arms around herself as if she could hold together the pieces of her splintering world. "This is madness. We met once before today. You know nothing about me. I could be awful. I could be everything Vernon says I am. Do you really believe that, sometimes?" The admission hurt. "Sometimes I think maybe he is right, and I am worthless and ugly and stupid, and I deserve what I get." Ryder closed the distance between them in one long stride, and before Martha could react, he cupped her face in his hands, forcing her to meet his eyes. His touch was gentle despite the intensity in his expression. "Listen to me very carefully. You are not worthless. You are not ugly. And you are certainly not stupid. Those are lies he has beaten into you to keep you small, to keep you under his control. But they are lies, Martha. Every single word. How can you know that? Because I see you. Really see you, not through his twisted version of reality. I see a woman who has survived years of abuse and still has kindness in her eyes. I see someone strong enough to endure hell and still get up every morning and keep going. I see someone beautiful, not just in face but in spirit." His thumbs brushed over her cheekbones, and his voice dropped to barely above a whisper. "You are too beautiful to hurt, Martha. Too precious to waste on a man who does not understand what he has." The sob that tore from Martha's throat came from somewhere deep, a place of grief and longing she had locked away for years. She collapsed against Ryder's chest, and his arms came around her immediately, holding her close while she cried. He did not try to quiet her or rush her. He simply held her, one hand stroking her hair, murmuring soft reassurances that she was safe, that he had her, that everything would be all right. When the storm finally passed, Martha pulled back, embarrassed by the wet patch her tears had left on his shirt. "I am sorry. Do not apologize for feeling. You have earned the right to cry." Martha looked up at him, seeing the sincerity in his face, and something shifted inside her. A decision crystallized, terrifying and exhilarating all at once. If I did this, if I left with you, where would we go? Hope flared in Ryder's eyes. Anywhere you want. California, Oregon, Colorado. I have saved money from working. We could start over somewhere no one knows us, somewhere you could be free. Vernon would look for me. Let him look. The West is vast, and we would stay ahead of him. And what would I be to you? Your wife in all but law. Your mistress. Ryder's expression softened. You would be whatever you want to be. If you want separate living arrangements until you can legally divorce Vernon, we can arrange that. If you want me simply as a friend and protector, I will accept that. I'm not offering you freedom with strings attached, Martha. I am offering you a choice, maybe the first real choice you have had in years. Martha searched his face, looking for any sign of deception or ulterior motive. But she found only honesty, only genuine care and the kind of attraction that made her pulse race. This man, this near stranger, was offering her a chance at a new life. It was insane. It was dangerous. It was possibly the only opportunity she would ever have. I need time to think, she said finally. Ryder nodded, though she could see the disappointment flicker across his features. Of course, take all the time you need. But Martha, if he hurts you again, if you are ever in immediate danger, you come find me. Promise me that. I promise. He released her reluctantly, and Martha immediately missed the warmth of his embrace. She bent to retrieve her basket, gathering the scattered berries with shaking hands. When she straightened, Ryder was watching her with an expression that made her heart flutter. I should get back before Vernon returns, she said. Let me ride with you part of the way. Make sure you get home safely. They walked together in companionable silence, Ryder leading his horse, Martha clutching her basket. At the point where they had to part ways, Ryder touched her arm gently. Think about what I said. Think about what kind of life you could have, free from fear and pain. You deserve happiness, Martha. You deserve love. She could not find words to respond, so she simply nodded and turned toward home, feeling his gaze on her back until she was out of sight. The cabin felt like a tomb after the open air and Ryder's presence. Martha put away her meager berry collection and finished preparing Vernon's requested clean water and perfect living space. But her mind was miles away, replaying every word Ryder had said, every gentle touch, every promise of something better. Could she really do it? Could she leave behind everything she knew, run away with a man she had met twice, risk Vernon's wrath and society's judgment, and the eternal damnation her childhood preacher had promised women who abandoned their marital vows? Vernon returned late that night, drunk as expected, and Martha served him cold meat and bread without comment. He ate in surly silence, then stumbled to their bedroom without bothering to remove his boots. Martha listened to his snoring and thought about freedom, about hazel eyes and gentle hands, about a life where she could walk without fear. By morning, she had not decided anything. But the seed Ryder had planted had taken root, and Martha knew, somewhere deep in her bones, that everything was about to change. The next 2 weeks were torture of a different kind. Martha continued her daily routine, enduring Vernon's increasingly violent moods while her mind spun with possibilities and fears. She saw Ryder 3 more times, brief encounters when he was riding the boundary of Sanderson's ranch, and she happened to be outside. They spoke carefully, aware that anyone could see them, could report back to Vernon. But each conversation strengthened Martha's resolve and deepened her feelings for this cowboy who treated her like she mattered. Ryder told her about his life, how he and his brothers had been working ranches since they were teenagers, how their parents had died in a riverboat accident when Ryder was 20, how he had raised Samuel and Thomas himself, keeping the family together through hard work and determination. He spoke of dreams to own his own ranch someday, to build something lasting, to have a family and a home filled with laughter instead of fear. Martha shared her own story in pieces, testing whether he would judge her. She told him about her parents' death, about Vernon's courtship that had seemed so proper and promising, about how quickly the mask had dropped after their wedding. She confessed her shame at staying, at not being strong enough to leave years ago, at sometimes believing Vernon's cruel words. Ryder listened to everything without judgment, only compassion. And with each conversation, Martha felt herself falling for him, not just as an escape route but as a man, someone whose values aligned with her own, whose humor made her smile, whose presence made her feel alive for the first time in years. It was a Sunday afternoon when everything came to a head. Vernon had been drinking heavily all weekend, his gambling debts mounting, his temper explosively short. Martha had learned to read the warning signs, to know when violence was coming. That afternoon, she saw it in the set of his shoulders, the way his hand kept curling into a fist, the mean glint in his bloodshot eyes. She did not react fast enough when he backhanded her across the kitchen. The force of the blow sent her sprawling, her head cracking against the edge of the table. Stars exploded across her vision and warm blood trickled down her temple. "You stupid, ugly bitch," Vernon snarled, standing over her. "This is all your fault. If you were worth anything, if you could give me sons, if you were not so goddamn useless, maybe my luck would change." He drew back his boot, and Martha knew this kick would be bad, possibly fatal. She curled instinctively into a ball, arms over her head, praying it would end quickly. The kick never came. Instead, Martha heard the cabin door slam open and Vernon's startled curse. She looked up through blurred vision to see Ryder Kincaid standing in the doorway, his face terrible with rage. "Step away from her," Ryder said, his voice low and deadly calm. Vernon straightened, swaying slightly. "Who the hell are you? Get off my property." "I said step away from your wife." "This is none of your business, Cowboy. What happens between a man and his wife is his own affair." Ryder moved faster than Martha would have thought possible. He crossed the room in 3 strides and grabbed Vernon by the shirt front, slamming him against the wall with enough force to rattle the dishes. "When you hurt someone I care about, it becomes my business." Vernon's eyes widened, and he looked from Ryder to Martha, comprehension dawning. "You have been whoring around with this Cowboy, you faithless slut." "She has done nothing wrong," Ryder said through clenched teeth. "But you have. You have hurt and terrorized your wife for years, and it ends now. You are going to let her leave with me peacefully, or I am going to make you regret ever laying a hand on her." Vernon laughed, the sound ugly. "You think you can just take my wife? That is theft, Cowboy. I will have the law on you so fast your head will spin." "Let them come. I will take my chances with a judge over leaving Martha here with you another day." Martha found her voice, though it came out weak. "Ryder, please, you cannot do this. He will have you arrested." Ryder glanced at her, his expression softening for just a moment. "I told you I would protect you, Martha. I meant it." He turned back to Vernon, tightening his grip. "What will it be? Do you let her go peacefully, or do I beat some sense into you first?" Vernon's face purpled with rage, and he swung wildly at Ryder. The Cowboy dodged easily and released him, stepping back into a defensive stance. Vernon came at him again, throwing drunken punches that Ryder blocked or evaded. Finally, Ryder landed one solid punch to Vernon's jaw, and the older man went down hard, crashing into a chair that splintered beneath him. He did not get up. Ryder knelt beside Martha, his anger instantly replaced by concern. "Are you all right? Let me see your head." His fingers were gentle as they probed the cut on her temple, and Martha winced but did not pull away. "I think I am okay. It looks worse than it is. We need to leave now before he comes around. Can you stand?" Martha let Ryder help her to her feet, the room spinning slightly. "I cannot just leave. All my things can be replaced. Your life cannot. What do you absolutely need?" Martha looked around the cabin that had been her prison for 5 years. What did she need from this place? In the end, she grabbed a small leather pouch that held her mother's wedding ring and a photograph of her parents, the only items that held any real value. Everything else could burn for all she cared. Ryder kept his arm around her waist, supporting her as they stepped over Vernon's unconscious form and out into the fading afternoon light. His horse was tied nearby, and he lifted Martha into the saddle before swinging up behind her, his arms bracketing her securely. "Where are we going?" Martha asked as they started moving at a fast trot. "Sanderson's ranch first, to get my things and my brother's. Then we ride hard for Colorado. I have friends in Denver who will help us, and you can file for divorce there. It will be easier than in Utah." Martha leaned back against his chest, feeling his heartbeat strong and steady against her spine. The reality of what was happening began to sink in, bringing equal parts terror and relief. She had done it. She had left Vernon. She was free. Or she would be, once they got far enough away that he could not drag her back. They reached Sanderson's ranch as the sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. Samuel and Thomas were waiting outside the bunkhouse, clearly having been warned by Ryder earlier that they might need to leave suddenly. They had 3 horses saddled and ready, packs loaded with supplies. Samuel helped Martha down while Ryder gave quick instructions to his brothers. "We ride through the night. Vernon will come after us, and he might bring the law or hired guns. We stay off main roads and keep moving until we are well into Colorado." "What about Martha?" Thomas asked, the youngest of the brothers at 22, his face concerned. "She is hurt." "Should we not find a doctor?" "I am all right," Martha said, though her head throbbed. "I can ride." Ryder studied her face, and she saw the worry in his eyes, but he nodded. "We will stop for supplies in the first town we reach, get that cut properly cleaned." "But Thomas is right. We need to move fast." They rode out as darkness fell, Martha sharing Ryder's horse while his brothers flanked them. The night was cold, the stars brilliant overhead, and Martha focused on the rhythm of the horse's gait and the warmth of Ryder's body behind her. Every mile they covered was a mile further from Vernon, a mile closer to the possibility of a new life. They rode through the night and into the next day, stopping only to rest the horses and grab quick meals. Martha's head ached, and her body protested the long hours in the saddle, but she never complained. Ryder was attentive, offering her water, adjusting their pace when he sensed she was flagging, speaking quietly about inconsequential things to keep her mind occupied. By the time they crossed into Colorado 3 days later, Martha felt like a different person. The fear that had been her constant companion for 5 years began to loosen its grip. She caught herself smiling at something Samuel said, laughing at a joke Thomas told. She slept without nightmares, curled in a bedroll near the fire with Ryder keeping watch, and woke feeling more rested than she had in years. They reached Denver a week after fleeing Utah. The city was bustling and noisy and wonderful in its anonymity. Ryder had friends there as promised, a family named Patterson who ran a boarding house, and asked no questions when Ryder explained that Martha needed a safe place to stay. Mrs. Patterson, a motherly woman in her 50s, took one look at Martha's healing bruises and fading cut and understood immediately. "You stay as long as you need, dear," she said, patting Martha's hand. "We have had other women in your situation. You are safe here." Ryder helped Martha get settled in a small but clean room, then sat with her while she tried to process everything that had happened. "I need to find work," he said. "Denver has opportunities, and I want to stay close while you get the divorce sorted out. My brothers and I can hire on at one of the ranches outside town." "You do not have to stay," Martha said, though her heart clenched at the thought of him leaving. "You have done so much already. You saved my life, Ryder. I can never repay that." He reached across the small table between them and took her hand. "I am not staying out of obligation, Martha. I am staying because I want to. Because the thought of riding away and not knowing if you are all right, not seeing you every day, it makes me feel like I cannot breathe. These past days on the trail, getting to know you better, it has only confirmed what I felt from the first moment I saw you." Martha's throat tightened. "What did you feel?" "That you were going to change my life. That I had found something precious and rare, and if I let you slip away, I would regret it forever." He raised her hand to his lips, pressing a soft kiss to her knuckles. "I am falling in love with you, Martha Coleman. I know the timing is terrible and you have been through hell, and probably the last thing you want is another man making claims on your heart. But I cannot pretend I do not feel this way. I cannot lie and say I am just being a good Samaritan. I want a future with you if you will have me." Tears spilled down Martha's cheeks, but they were not tears of pain or fear. They were tears of hope, of joy, of finally believing that good things could happen. "I am falling in love with you too," she whispered. "I fought it at first because it seemed impossible, because I was married and you were leaving and nothing made sense. But you made me feel human again, Ryder. You made me remember what it is like to be valued and respected. And yes, the timing is awful and I am a mess and I do not know what the future holds. But I know I want you in it." Ryder stood and pulled her into his arms, and Martha went willingly, wrapping her arms around his waist and holding tight. He kissed the top of her head, then her temple just beside the healing cut, then her forehead. When he pulled back to look at her, Martha saw everything she felt reflected in his eyes. "We will figure this out together," he said. "One day at a time." The next months were hard but hopeful. Martha filed for divorce, which in Colorado was easier than Utah, but still required proving Vernon's cruelty. She had to testify before a judge about the abuse, had to relive every brutal moment in clinical detail. It was agonizing, but Ryder was there every step of the way, sitting in the courtroom when he was allowed, waiting outside when he was not, holding her hand and reminding her that she was strong enough to do this. Vernon did come after them, arriving in Denver 2 months after they had fled. But he found no sympathy from the law when the evidence of his abuse was laid out. The judge granted Martha her divorce on the grounds of extreme cruelty. And when Vernon tried to protest, tried to claim his rights as a husband, he was escorted from the courthouse by deputies who made it clear he was not welcome in Denver. The day the divorce was finalized, Martha walked out of the courthouse a free woman for the first time in her adult life. Ryder was waiting on the steps, and when she showed him the papers, he swept her into his arms and spun her around, both of them laughing like children. "You are free," he said, setting her down but keeping his arms around her. "How does it feel?" "Terrifying. Wonderful, like I can finally breathe." "What do you want to do now? Where do you want to go?" Martha looked up at him, this man who had given her back her life, who had shown her what real love looked like. "I want to stay here with you. I want to build a life together, if that is what you still want. It is all I have ever wanted since the day I met you." Ryder pulled a small box from his pocket and Martha's breath caught. "I know this is fast. I know we have only known each other a few months, but I have never been more certain of anything. Martha Coleman, will you marry me? Will you let me spend the rest of my life proving that you are beautiful and precious and worth everything?" Martha's hands shook as she took the box and opened it. Inside was a simple gold band with a small sapphire, nothing fancy but perfect in its sincerity. "Yes," she said through tears. "Yes, I will marry you." They were married a month later in a small church in Denver, with Samuel and Thomas as witnesses and Mrs. Patterson crying happy tears in the front pew. Martha wore a new dress, pale blue with lace at the collar, and she felt beautiful for the first time in years. When Ryder looked at her walking down the aisle, the expression on his face told her everything she needed to know about how he saw her. Their wedding night was tender and careful, Ryder patient as Martha worked through years of trauma and fear around physical intimacy. He took his time, murmuring reassurances, showing her that a man's touch could bring pleasure instead of pain, that her body was her own and would never again be used as a punishing ground. Martha cried, but they were healing tears, and when Ryder held her afterward, she felt pieces of her broken heart beginning to mend. The Kincaid brothers, now including Martha, bought a small ranch outside Denver with their combined savings. It was not much, just 100 acres with a modest house that needed work, but it was theirs. They spent the winter of 1874 fixing up the property, building corrals, planning for the herd they would start come spring. Martha threw herself into creating a real home, something she had never had with Vernon. She planted a garden, sewed curtains for the windows, learned to cook meals that people actually enjoyed eating. Samuel and Thomas treated her like the sister they had never had, teasing her gently, asking her opinion on ranch decisions, making her feel like part of the family. But it was with Ryder that Martha truly bloomed. He courted her like they were newlyweds even after months of marriage, bringing her wildflowers, stealing kisses in the barn, sitting with her on the porch in the evenings and talking about everything and nothing. He told her constantly that she was beautiful, and slowly, Martha began to believe it. Not because her appearance had changed, but because she saw herself reflected in his eyes and understood that beauty was about so much more than features. It was about spirit and strength, kindness and courage. And by those measures, Ryder made her see that she had always been beautiful, even when Vernon tried to convince her otherwise. In the spring of 1875, Martha discovered she was pregnant. The news brought mixed emotions, fear that she would fail as a mother, worry about the pain of childbirth, but underneath it all, a profound joy. Ryder was overjoyed, immediately becoming protective and attentive, though Martha had to remind him she was pregnant, not made of glass. Their son was born in December, a healthy baby with Ryder's dark hair and Martha's blue eyes. They named him James, and Martha fell in love the moment she held him, this tiny person who represented everything good that had come from leaving her old life behind. Ryder was a devoted father, walking the floor with James when he cried, changing diapers without complaint, looking at his son with such pure love that Martha sometimes caught herself crying happy tears. The ranch prospered over the next few years. They built up a good herd, hired a few hands to help with the work, expanded the house to accommodate their growing family. Martha gave birth to a daughter they named Claire in 1877, and another son, Henry, in 1879. Each child was welcomed with the same love and joy, each one growing up in a home filled with laughter and security. Samuel and Thomas eventually built their own houses on the property, Samuel marrying a teacher from Denver in 1876, and Thomas wedding the daughter of a neighboring rancher in 1878. The Kincaid Ranch became a family compound, children running between houses, Sunday dinners with everyone gathered around a long table, celebrations and hardships shared equally. Martha sometimes thought about Vernon, wondered what had become of him. She heard through the rare letter from acquaintances in Utah that he had drunk himself to death in 1877, alone and unmourned. She felt pity for the man he could have been if he had not been consumed by cruelty, but she felt no grief. That chapter of her life was closed, and she refused to give him any more of her energy or emotion. Instead, she focused on the present, on the life she had built with Ryder. They had their struggles, of course. The ranch faced hard winters and dry summers, financial pressures and the challenges of raising children. Martha still had nightmares occasionally, still flinched at sudden movements even years after leaving Vernon. But Ryder was patient, always patient, helping her through the hard moments, celebrating the victories. On their 10th wedding anniversary in 1885, Ryder took Martha on a picnic to a hill overlooking their ranch. The children were with Samuel and Thomas for the day, giving them rare time alone. They sat on a blanket watching the sunset paint the Colorado sky in shades of gold and pink, their hands intertwined. "You remember the day we met?" Ryder asked, his thumb tracing circles on Martha's palm. "Every detail," Martha said. "I remember thinking you were the most handsome man I had ever seen, and then immediately feeling guilty for thinking that." Ryder smiled. "I remember thinking you looked sad and scared and wanting to take away whatever was causing you pain. I remember the bruise on your cheek and feeling angrier than I had ever felt in my life. You saved me that day, even though it took a few more weeks for me to let you." "No, Martha, you saved yourself. I just gave you the opportunity. You were the one brave enough to take it, to leave everything you knew for the possibility of something better." Martha leaned her head on his shoulder, feeling his arm come around her. "We have built something good here, have we not? Something worth all the hard times, better than good. We have built something extraordinary, a life, a family, a love that I never thought I would find." He turned to face her, his hazel eyes serious. "You know I tell you this all the time, but I need you to hear it again. You are beautiful, Martha Kincaid, not just to me, but objectively. Your kindness, your strength, the way you love our children, the way you have rebuilt yourself from someone broken into someone whole. You are the most beautiful woman I have ever known, and I am grateful every single day that you chose to trust me, to build this life with me." Martha felt the familiar sting of tears, but they were happy tears, the kind she had grown accustomed to in her years with Ryder. "I love you so much. Sometimes I still cannot believe this is real, that I get to have this life with you. Believe it. This is real and it is forever." They kissed as the sun dipped below the horizon, and Martha felt the last shadows of her past finally fade away. She had been told she was too ugly to love, that she was worthless and deserved pain. But Ryder had shown her the truth, that she was too beautiful to hurt, too precious to waste, too worthy of love to settle for anything less than what she deserved. The years continued to pass in a pattern of seasons and celebrations. The children grew, James becoming a strong young man who loved working the ranch, Claire developing a passion for horses and training them, Henry showing an aptitude for numbers that suggested he might take over the business side of the operation someday. Martha watched them flourish and knew that she had broken the cycle of cruelty, that her children would never know what it meant to live in fear of a parent's temper. In 1890, on a warm summer evening, the entire extended Kincaid family gathered for a barbecue. 3 generations now, with Samuel and Thomas's children running around with James and Claire and Henry, and baby Emily, born to Martha and Ryder late in their marriage as a surprise blessing. Martha stood on her porch watching the chaos of family life, feeling Ryder's presence behind her. "What are you thinking about?" he asked, wrapping his arms around her waist. "How far we have come. How different my life is from what I thought it would be." "Better or worse?" Martha turned in his arms, reaching up to cup his face. There was silver in his dark hair now, lines around his eyes that came from years of squinting into the sun and smiling. He was 45 years old, weathered by ranch work and time, and he was still the most handsome man she had ever seen. So much better than I ever dreamed possible. You gave me everything, Ryder. Hope when I had none, love when I thought I was unlovable, a family and a home and a life worth living. I was dead inside when you met me, just going through the motions of existing, but you brought me back to life. We brought each other back to life, Ryder corrected gently. I was just going through the motions too, working from job to job, no real purpose beyond survival. But then I saw you, and suddenly everything made sense. Suddenly I knew what I had been missing, what I was meant to do. Love you, protect you, build a life with you. That became my purpose, and it has made every day since meaningful. They stood together watching their family, their ranch, their life spread out before them. Martha thought about the girl she had been, married to a cruel man in a cabin outside Parowan, believing she deserved the pain because she was too ugly, too worthless, too broken to deserve better. That girl seemed like a stranger now, someone from a different lifetime. Because the truth was, she had never been ugly. She had never been worthless. She had always deserved love and kindness and respect. It had just taken the right person, a cowboy with gentle hands and fierce protective instincts, and a heart big enough to see past the lies she had been told, to make her understand that fundamental truth. Vernon had said she was too ugly to love, trying to break her spirit and keep her trapped. But Ryder had shown her she was too beautiful to hurt, too precious to harm, too worthy of love to accept anything less than she deserved. And in believing him, in trusting his vision of who she was instead of Vernon's lies, Martha had found not just freedom but herself. The sun set over the Colorado ranch, painting everything in shades of gold, and Martha Kincaid stood in her husband's arms surrounded by family and love, finally at peace with the face in the mirror, finally understanding that beauty had nothing to do with features and everything to do with the heart. She was loved fiercely and completely by a man who had never wavered in his devotion, who had given her the space to heal and the support to flourish. It was a happy ending, the kind Martha had stopped believing in during those dark years with Vernon. But it was also a beginning, each day offering new joys and challenges, new reasons to be grateful for the courage she had found to leave, for the cowboy who had offered her hope, for the life they had built together through hard work and unwavering love. As the stars began to appear overhead and children's laughter echoed across the ranch, Martha closed her eyes and offered a silent prayer of gratitude. She had been given a second chance at life, and she had not wasted it. She had loved deeply, raised her children well, built a legacy that would outlast her. She had taken the broken pieces of who she had been and forged them into something beautiful and strong. And she had never, not for one moment since marrying Ryder Kincaid, doubted that she was worthy of every bit of happiness she had found. Years later, when Martha was an old woman sitting on that same porch with silver hair and grandchildren playing in the yard, she would tell her story to anyone who asked. She would talk about the cruelty she had endured and the courage it took to leave, about the cowboy who had seen her worth when she could not see it herself, about the life they had built together through love and determination. And she would always end with the same words, hoping they would give strength to any woman trapped as she had once been trapped, hope to anyone who believed they were too broken to deserve better. "He told me I was too ugly to love," Martha would say, her blue eyes still bright despite her age, her hands still reaching automatically for Ryder's. "But the man I married, the true love of my life, showed me I was too beautiful to hurt, and that made all the difference." It was a story of survival and redemption, of finding love in unexpected places, of having the courage to leave behind what was familiar for the possibility of something better. It was a story set in the harsh beauty of the Wild West, where life was hard and justice was often rough, but where second chances were possible for those brave enough to seize them. And it was a love story, first and foremost. A testament to the fact that real love does not diminish or destroy. Real love builds up, supports, cherishes, and honors. Real love sees beauty where others see flaws, finds strength in vulnerability, and creates safety where there was once only fear. Martha and Ryder Kincaid lived out their days on that Colorado ranch, surrounded by family, sustained by love, grateful for every moment they had together. When Ryder passed in 1905 at the age of 60, Martha grieved deeply but not hopelessly. She knew she had been blessed beyond measure to have 30 years with a man who had loved her unconditionally, who had shown her what marriage could be when built on respect and genuine affection. And when Martha herself passed peacefully in her sleep in 1910 at the age of 61, her children and grandchildren gathered to remember not the abused woman who had fled Utah in 1873, but the strong, loving matriarch who had built a legacy of kindness and courage, who had taught them through her example that everyone deserves to be loved well, and that it is never too late to choose happiness over suffering. The ranch continued through the generations, the Kincaid name becoming synonymous with integrity and hard work in their corner of Colorado. And sometimes, when the sunset painted the sky in shades of gold and the wind whispered through the grass, those who knew the family history would swear they could feel the presence of Martha and Ryder, still watching over the land they had loved, still together in whatever came after this life, their love story eternal. Because that is the thing about true love, the kind that weathers storms and overcomes impossible odds. It does not end when life ends. It becomes part of the fabric of the world, woven into the land and the legacy, inspiring others to believe that love is possible, that healing is real, that it is never too late to become who you were always meant to be. Martha Coleman had been too ugly to love, according to a man who knew nothing about beauty or love. But Martha Kincaid had been too beautiful to hurt, according to a man who understood that beauty comes from within, that strength is born of suffering overcome, and that the most precious thing in the world is a heart brave enough to trust again after being broken. And in the end, that made all the difference. The story of Martha and Ryder spread through the years, becoming something of a legend in their community. Young women in difficult marriages would hear about the woman who had escaped and found happiness, and some would find the courage to leave their own situations. The Kincaid family became known not just for their successful ranch, but for their willingness to help those in need, continuing the legacy Martha and Ryder had started. The ranch house, expanded over the years, held memories in every corner. The kitchen where Martha had learned to cook with joy instead of fear. The bedroom where 5 children had been born into love. The porch where countless evenings had been spent watching sunsets and talking about dreams. Each room told a story of transformation, of a woman who had reclaimed her life and a man who had made it his mission to ensure she never regretted that choice. James Kincaid, the eldest son, took over the ranch operations when Ryder's health began to fail, running it with the same integrity his father had shown. He married a woman named Sarah in 1895, and they raised 4 children on the land, teaching them the values of hard work and compassion that Martha and Ryder had instilled. James often spoke of his mother's courage, making sure his children understood what she had overcome to give them the stable, loving home they enjoyed. Claire Kincaid became one of the finest horse trainers in Colorado, her gentle touch and patience with difficult animals reflecting the kindness her mother had always shown. She married late, at 32, to a veterinarian named David who appreciated her independence and skill. They had 2 children and built a house on the far side of the Kincaid property, close enough to family but with space for Claire's work. Henry Kincaid, with his head for numbers, moved to Denver and became a successful banker, but he never forgot his roots. He returned to the ranch frequently, and when he married Elizabeth, a schoolteacher, in 1901, they held the wedding on the ranch with the entire family present. Henry used his position to help other families get loans to start their own ranches, paying forward the opportunities his parents had worked so hard to create. Emily, the surprise baby born when Martha was 41, grew up surrounded by nephews and nieces who adored her. She became a teacher like her sister-in-law Elizabeth, dedicating her life to education and never marrying, though not for lack of suitors. She often said she had seen the perfect marriage in her parents and would rather be alone than settle for less. She lived in the main ranch house her entire life, caring for Martha in her final years, and later turning the house into a haven for women fleeing difficult situations, continuing her mother's unofficial legacy of helping those who needed escape. The town of Denver grew around them, the wild west of Martha's youth gradually giving way to civilization and progress. But the Kincaid Ranch remained, a constant in a changing world, a testament to what could be built with love and determination. The extended family gathered every Christmas, filling the ranch house with noise and laughter, and the chaos of multiple generations. They would eat Martha's traditional Christmas dinner, recipes she had perfected over years of practice, and someone would inevitably tell stories about the early days, about how Ryder and Martha had started with almost nothing and built an empire through sheer will and devotion to each other. As the 20th century began, bringing with it automobiles and electricity and all manner of modern conveniences, the Kincaid family adapted while holding tight to the values that had always defined them. They believed in hard work, in treating everyone with dignity, in standing up for those who could not stand up for themselves. They believed in love, the kind that was patient and kind and never failing. They believed in second chances and the possibility of transformation. And at the heart of all those beliefs was the story of Martha and Ryder, the woman who had been told she was worthless and the man who had shown her she was priceless. 2 souls who had found each other against all odds and built something that would outlast them both. When the last of their generation passed, when all 5 of their children had lived full lives and eventually died peacefully in old age, the great-grandchildren and great-great-grandchildren gathered to remember the founders of their family legacy. They looked at old photographs, Martha stern and beautiful in her later years, Ryder handsome even in old age, always with his hand on her shoulder or her waist, that connection between them visible even in still images. They read letters Martha had written, eloquent expressions of love and gratitude that showed a woman of intelligence and depth, giving lie to every cruel word Vernon had ever spoken about her worth. They examined the sapphire ring Ryder had given her, simple and sincere, passed down through the family as a reminder that love does not need grandeur to be meaningful. And they understood. These descendants who had never known hardship like Martha had endured, that they owed their very existence to her courage and Ryder's compassion. Without that moment when he had ridden past the cabin and seen her bruised face, without his decision to offer help, without her eventual decision to accept it and flee, none of them would exist. The entire family tree sprung from that single act of courage and kindness. The Kincaid Ranch still operates today, in the hands of the 6th generation, modernized but still recognizably the place Martha and Ryder built together. The original house stands preserved, a museum of sorts, open to visitors who want to hear the story of the woman who escaped and the cowboy who saved her. School groups come through, learning about life in the Old West and hearing a love story that proves truth is often more compelling than fiction. And sometimes, young women come alone, quietly asking to hear Martha's story in full, looking for hope in their own difficult situations. The Kincaid family never turns them away. They share Martha's story generously, and they offer help when needed, maintaining the network Emily started, connecting women to resources and safe places and legal aid. Because that, too, is part of the legacy. Martha understood what it meant to be trapped, to believe you had no options, to think you deserved the pain you received. And she made sure, in her years of freedom, to help other women understand they had choices, that they deserved better, that it was never too late to start over. The love story of Martha and Ryder Kincaid is not just a personal tale of two people who found each other. It is a testament to the power of compassion, the importance of seeing people truly, and not through the lens of someone else's cruelty. It is a reminder that words have power, that being told you are ugly and worthless can convince you it is true. But being told you are beautiful and precious can set you free to become who you were always meant to be. Ryder Kincaid saw Martha not as she had been beaten down to appear, but as she truly was beneath the fear and pain. And in seeing her that way, in treating her with consistent kindness and respect, he allowed her to see herself clearly for the first time. That gift, the gift of being truly seen and valued, transformed Martha's life completely. And Martha, in turn, gave Ryder the gift of purpose and partnership. She was not a damsel who remained helpless after being rescued. She became a true partner, working beside him to build the ranch, offering her own ideas and efforts, creating a marriage of equals even in a time when women had few legal rights. She showed him that love was not about ownership or control, but about mutual support and respect. Together, they created something that lasted far beyond their own lives, a family legacy built on the foundation of authentic love, the kind that sees clearly, loves deeply, and never wavers even in the face of hardship. And that is why, more than 100 years after Martha Coleman fled her abusive husband with the help of a cowboy named Ryder Kincaid, their story still matters. Because people still need to hear that it is possible to escape, to heal, to love again after trauma. People still need to know that being told you are worthless does not make it true, that beauty comes from within, that you deserve to be treated with kindness. The Wild West of Martha's time is long gone, tamed by civilization and progress. But the human heart remains the same, capable of both great cruelty and profound love. And as long as there are people who hurt and people who help, as long as there are those who diminish and those who build up, Martha and Ryder's story will resonate. She was told she was too ugly to love, but she learned she was too beautiful to hurt. And in that truth, in that transformation, lies hope for everyone who has ever been made to feel less than they are, for everyone who has ever doubted their own worth, for everyone who has ever wondered if it is possible to start over and build something beautiful from the ashes of a painful past. The answer, as Martha and Ryder proved, is yes. It is possible. It is never too late. And love, true love that sees and values and protects, can heal even the deepest wounds and create a legacy that lasts forever. Their story, set in the dusty trails and red rock cliffs of the Utah and Colorado territories, played out against the backdrop of the American West in transition, is ultimately universal and timeless. It is about human dignity, about the choice to be kind when you could be cruel, about the courage to leave what is familiar for what is unknown but potentially better. And it is about love, the kind that changes everything, the kind that makes life worth living, the kind that proves beyond any doubt that every person has inherent worth and deserves to be cherished. Martha and Ryder Kincaid lived that truth every day of their marriage, and their descendants continue to live it today, making the world a better place one act of kindness at a time, forever inspired by the example of a woman who was told she was worthless, but proved she was priceless, and a man who saw beauty where others saw only flaws and loved without reservation or condition. That is their legacy, and it will endure as long as people tell stories about love conquering fear, about courage overcoming cruelty, about the transformative power of being seen and valued for who you truly are. The Wild West may be gone, but the lessons learned there, the love stories born in that harsh, beautiful land, remain relevant and inspiring. And so the story ends not with death but with legacy, not with sorrow but with hope, not with an ending but with the promise that love, like Martha and Ryder's, never truly ends. It ripples outward through generations, touching lives, inspiring courage, proving that the most powerful force in the world is not violence or wealth or fame, but simply this: one person choosing to see another's worth and love them accordingly. That is what Ryder did for Martha, and what Martha, through her healing and flourishing, did for countless others. And that is why their story matters, why it is worth telling and retelling, why more than a century after they lived and loved and built their legacy, people still speak their names with reverence and gratitude. They were just two people, a cowboy and a woman fleeing abuse, who chose love over fear, compassion over cruelty, hope over despair. But in making those choices, they changed not just their own lives but the lives of everyone who came after them, creating a legacy that proves love is always worth fighting for, always worth the risk, always worth believing in. And that, in the end, is the greatest love story of all.